Hey story lovers. If you're into mystery, suspense, and unexpected twists, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe, relax, and let's dive into today's story. Lila had always been a woman with a plan. She didn't have the luxury of a rich family to fall back on, so she worked relentlessly to build her career. Her dream had always been to work for a prestigious company, and after years of struggling, the opportunity finally came knocking. She was invited to interview for the position of marketing manager at one of the top firms in the city, Waverly Enterprises. What she didn't know was that this interview would change her life forever. As she walked into the glass building of Waverly Enterprises, Lila's heart raced. The sleek, modern design of the office space reflected the company's success, and the imposing figure of the CEO, Alexander Waverly, only added to the prestige. Alexander was known as one of the youngest, most successful CEOs in the country. With his impeccable style, sharp intellect, and authoritative presence, he commanded attention wherever he went. When Lila was finally led into his office, she found herself standing in front of a man who embodied everything she had ever aspired to: wealth, power, and sophistication. He greeted her with a firm handshake and a charming smile, and for a moment, Lila felt like the world had stopped spinning. His eyes were piercing, yet there was an air of kindness in them that made her feel at ease, despite the tension she was experiencing. Their conversation flowed effortlessly. Lila was articulate, confident, and prepared, and Alexander seemed genuinely impressed by her abilities. But as the interview came to a close, something unexpected happened. There was an undeniable attraction between them, something neither of them had anticipated. Lila tried to shake it off, attributing it to the nervous energy of the moment, but Alexander couldn't help but be captivated by her intelligence and beauty. She was different from the usual candidates he met, real, grounded, and refreshing. As she left his office, Lila couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. She had felt it, an invisible thread pulling her toward him, and she wasn't sure if she should be thrilled or terrified. Lila's first few days at Waverly Enterprises were a whirlwind of meetings, strategy sessions, and team-building exercises. She quickly settled into her new role, impressing everyone with her dedication and skills. Yet, it was Alexander's presence that lingered in her mind. She had never imagined working so closely with someone of his caliber, and it became harder and harder to keep her emotions in check. At the company's events and gatherings, she found herself stealing glances at him from across the room. He seemed to exude confidence and control, but there was a vulnerability in his eyes that made her wonder if there was more to him than the public persona he showed. One evening, after a company dinner, Alexander asked her to join him for a drink. Lila hesitated for a moment, but then agreed, unsure of what she was getting herself into. They sat at a quiet corner of the bar, and their conversation shifted from work to personal matters. Alexander spoke of his childhood, his struggles, and the sacrifices he had made to reach the top. Lila, in turn, shared her journey of self-discovery and the obstacles she had overcome to get to where she was. It was during this conversation that Lila began to see Alexander in a different light, not just as a CEO, but as a man with a complex history. The more she got to know him, the more she found herself drawn to him. She knew it was dangerous to feel this way. He was married, and she had come here to work, not to fall in love. But despite her best efforts to resist, her feelings for Alexander grew stronger with each passing day. She couldn't help it, he was magnetic. Every interaction, every word, every touch seemed to pull her deeper into his orbit. And Alexander, too, couldn't ignore the connection between them. He began to seek her out more often, wanting to spend time with her beyond work hours. Their professional relationship was starting to blur into something more personal, something that neither of them could define. Weeks turned into months, and what had started as an innocent attraction soon evolved into something far more complicated. Lila tried to keep her distance, reminding herself that Alexander was married and that her feelings were misplaced. But one evening, as they shared another private moment, the temptation proved too much to resist. They kissed. It was gentle at first, hesitant, as though both of them were testing the waters. But soon, the kiss deepened, and Lila felt as though her entire world was shifting. She had crossed a line, and for the first time in her life, she was both exhilarated and terrified. The affair began in secrecy. Lila and Alexander would meet after hours, away from prying eyes. Their stolen moments were filled with passion, intensity, and a sense of urgency that neither could explain. They both knew it was wrong, yet they couldn't stop themselves. Alexander had grown disillusioned with his marriage, and Lila, despite her initial reservations, found herself falling deeper into this forbidden romance. Lila started questioning her own motivations. At first, she had been attracted to Alexander's wealth and power, but now, her feelings for him had grown into something more profound. She wasn't just in love with his status, she was in love with him, the man who shared his vulnerabilities with her, the man who made her feel seen in a way no one else had. Yet, every time they were together, a lingering sense of guilt hung over them. Lila knew that Alexander's wife had no idea what was happening, and the weight of that deception began to take its toll on her. But as the days passed, she found herself too deep in the affair to back out. She had lost control. Everything came crashing down one evening when Alexander's wife, Catherine, discovered the truth. It was a typical evening in the office, and Alexander had stepped out for a meeting. Lila was preparing for an upcoming presentation when Catherine arrived unannounced at the office. She had suspected something was off and, upon seeing the two of them together once, she finally confronted Lila. "Is it true?" Catherine's voice trembled with hurt and disbelief. "Are you and my husband?" Lila felt her heart sink. She hadn't planned for this moment, hadn't prepared for the fallout of their affair. She tried to explain, to apologize, but words seemed useless in the face of Catherine's devastation. Catherine, with tears streaming down her face, turned away from Lila, unable to say anything more. The news of the affair quickly spread, and Alexander was forced to confront his wife. Catherine, heartbroken and betrayed, packed her things and left their home. She couldn't live with the shame and the lies any longer. In the blink of an eye, Alexander lost the woman who had been with him through thick and thin, and Lila was left standing alone, realizing the gravity of her actions. In the aftermath, Alexander was a man broken by his own choices. His once perfect world had unraveled, and he was now forced to face the consequences of his infidelity. His marriage was over, his reputation tarnished, and the loneliness he had long felt now consumed him. Lila, too, felt the weight of her decisions. She had fallen for a married man, and in doing so, she had destroyed the very thing she had wanted most, a career built on respect and integrity. She thought that she was in control, but now, with everything falling apart, she realized she had never been in control at all. Alexander, now living alone, could only reflect on the choices that had led him to this point. He had everything, money, power, success, but had lost the most important things, trust, love, and his own happiness. Lila, on the other hand, knew that she had to move on. She couldn't stay in a place that reminded her of her mistakes. She left the company, and although her heart was broken, she knew it was time to rebuild her life. In the end, both of them were left with nothing but the echoes of their actions. Their affair had promised excitement and passion, but all it had delivered was pain, regret, and loneliness. They had both been searching for something they thought the other could provide, but in the end, they were left with only their own consequences.